Today we're going to look at algebraic equations and more specifically the four-corner model. We have done this already. We've looked at equations, we've looked at tables, we've looked at word problems, and we've looked at graphs, but we've never put them all together, and that's what the four-corner model does. Let's look at how a four-corner model is set up. If you notice, it's just the screen's been divided into four sections. That's all it is. You'll have a piece of paper and it's been divided into four sections. And each section has its own specific role. In the top left-hand corner, this is where they put their word problems. Easy peasy, it's a word problem. In the top right-hand corner is where they're going to put the equations. And the equations can be in either y equals mx plus b or y equals kx. So in this one, we're just going to say y equals 2x plus 7. And it's just really up to them on whether they want to make it a one-step or two-step equation. Then in our bottom left-hand corner, that's where we put our table. And now, a lot of times we just use the plain XY column, but when we are not given the equation, it makes it a whole lot easier if we'll go ahead and put in that process column. And we're going to look at that more in a minute. And then last but not least, we have our graph. And they are really nice to us. They only make us do the first quadrant, so you don't have to worry about all four. So we're just going to do the first quadrant, and you have to label your X and Y axis. Pretty simple. Now, the tricky part is they can give you any one of these four sections, and you have to make the other three. So say they give me word, I then have to make my equation, I have to make my table, and my graph. But if they want to, they can give you a graph, and you have to make the table equation and make up a word problem to match. We've done all of these different sections, we've just never put them together. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at one, and I'm going to give us the word problem, and then together we're going to create the table, equation, and graph. So first we're going to look at what they've given us, and in that case, this is the word problem. So Cynthia and her friends wanted to go to the carnival and are trying to make a budget. They know that they will have a $5 parking fee and it will cost them $3 a person to get in. How much would it cost if 2, 3, or 4 of them went? Now, this is a pretty standard word problem. First thing we need to do is we need to look for information. Now, is it important that they're going to the carnival? Not really. But we do see that they have a $5 parking fee, so we know that they are going to have to pay that. And it's $3 a person. So those are my two most important information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite them smaller down here. So my parking was $5. And I'm just going to put tickets because they have to buy tickets to get in is $3 a person. So I'm going to put each right there. Now, we're going to assume that they all drove in their car. In the same car, because that only makes sense. And so they would have to pay $5 and then $3 additional for each person. So now let's go look at our equation. Well, I changed my mind. I want to look at the table first because it's going to make our life so much easier when trying to find the equation. So now, I remember our important information that our parking was $5 and our tickets were $3. So how would this fit in? Our X and our Y. Our X is our input and our Y is our output. Well, basically, what are we trying to find? We are trying to find our cost. So once we put everything in our equation, it should give us our cost. So that means my Y is my cost. And if my Y is my cost, what are we putting in? Well, the question asked me how much would it be if 2, 3, or 4 friends went. So since it's asking me to put in the number of friends, that makes my X friends. Ooh, I know that's hard to read, but bear with me. Okay, so now let's look at how to plug it in. Well, how much would it be if nobody went and they're just walking up to the gate? Well, you know that they're going to spend $5 because they have to pay to park their car. So 0 plus the $5 is 5. But how much is it for one friend? If it's just her, Cynthia decided she's going on her own. Well, she had to pay $3 for a ticket, and she had to pay the $5 parking. So that made it how much? $8. Well, what if just her and her best friend go? So we have 2 people, and there's 3 for her, 3 for her friend, plus the $5, which is going to give me 6 plus 5 equals 11. 3 friends, 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 5. Well, 3 plus 3 plus 3 is 9, and 9 plus 5 is 14. What about 4? Well, I don't want to write 3 4 times, so what can I do? I can do 3 times 4 plus 5. Well, 3 times 4 is 12, plus 5 is 17. Now, I need to write the equation, and my equation is obviously a 2-step. So it's going to be y equals mx plus b. So, I want you to look at this one right here. That kind of looks like an equation. I have my coefficient, which is my number I multiply by, in this case 3, times something plus 5. Well, where did I get that 4? I took my 4 from my x column. So, all I had to do was let me get a different color, 3 times something plus 5. And we said we got our numbers from our x column. So in this case, it's just 3 times x plus 5. So, see how I said that taking my equation from the table is much easier than just trying to come up with one off the top of my head? When you are making this table, you're automatically doing the equation. You just don't realize it yet. So on my equation, it's just going to be y equals 3x plus 5. Easy. Okay, so last but not least, we have our graph. And notice I've done a couple of things that's not on your paper. I went ahead and I labeled my axis and I drew a table, which you do not need to draw the table. I just did that because it's easier for me to see, but your table's right beside you on the paper, so you don't need to do that. Now, you will need to label your axis, and you're probably wondering, why did I pick friends and cost? Well, my x-axis is what I put into the equation. And so I put my number of friends, however many friends were going, whether it was just me or 3 of my other friends, so there's 4 of us all together. Whatever I put in is my input, and that goes on my x. So I put my number of friends in. And what came out of the equation, which is my output or my y, was how much it was going to cost me. So that's why I labeled my y cost. Notice on my y, I counted by 2s. That's because my 5s would have been way too big, and I did not want to draw 17 lines, so I made it a little bit easier on myself and counted by 2s. So the last thing for us to do is just graph our points. My first point is 0, 5, so I'm going to go over 0, up 5, draw my point. Over 1, up 8, draw my point. Over 2, up 11, draw my point. Over 3, up 14. And last but not least, over 4, up 17. Draw in my line, and I am done. So when you get completely done with your 4-corner, this is what it's going to look like. Notice each section is filled in. I have my word problem, which is what I started with. Then I went down to my table, and I did keep my process column. And my process column is what gave me my equation. And then last but not least, I took my x and y values and I plotted them on a graph. All 4 of these are things that we've learned, and we've just done them in different pieces. The 4-corner just brings them together. Do not let this overwhelm you. All you need to do is just look at one piece at a time.